Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Rangers Review Briefing Old Firm special as we look ahead to Sunday's clash at Ibrox. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined by Jonny McFarlane and Joshua Barrie to look ahead. How are we doing, boys? Starting with you, Joshua. Are you excited about the game on Sunday?
Well, that's an interesting bit of information from Joshua there. Joshua, you're on mute, I believe. We can't hear a word you're saying. So perhaps I should answer that question if Joshua's not prepared to.
Yeah, we'll go with you, Johnny. How you looking ahead to Sunday? It's coming around quite quickly now after, it's the fourth game of the season, isn't it? Old Firm Derby Day. How much are you looking forward to it?
Oh, yeah, can't wait. It's going to be absolutely terrific. These are the games that that everyone loves, aren't they? I mean, there's no way around it. And to have 50,000 back for the first time since this awful COVID situation hit is just absolutely magnificent. So I'm sure the atmosphere is going to be incredible. We've got two teams, one who's not playing particularly well, certainly a lot, you would say, within themselves at the moment or up to this point. And another team in Celtic who have had a turnaround I don't think anyone would have quite predicted. And although in terms of the defence, they have issues going forward, they're pretty electric. So it's going to be a real test for Rangers going into this one. And that's why it's so exciting. It's going to be fascinating to see, what they call Ange Ball going up against Steven Gerrard and Michael Beale's football and philosophy that we've seen develop over these last 3 years from humble beginnings into a championship winning side.
Yeah, I think we've got Joshua back. Joshua,
how am I now? Am I there now?
Yeah. You're with us.
Now.
Welcome to Planet Earth.
Sorry.
You did a big piece on the website this morning. A fantastic little video you and Johnny did, looking at how Rangers beat Celtic on Sunday. How did they go about doing so, Joshua?
We got another piece coming tomorrow on it as well, so we're covering it in the detail you'd want. I think there's a few things. I think last night Celtic's game with AZ Alkmaar is the most revealing game of their season because it shows that even when they're protecting a lead, they're going to play two free attacking eights and try and play out in some quite ambitious areas, shall we say. So I think the way Rangers beat them is by exposing that. There's going to be space there. We know how good Rangers can be in space. If Rangers perform to the level, for example, they did against Antwerp at Ibrox when space was afforded on the break and Rangers were able to score some fantastic goals, then I think they win the game because I think they're more balanced. What's intriguing about Celtic's tactical setup is the fact that they don't really compensate their attacking efforts by dropping in midfielders much at all. What that means is obviously they play with inverted fullbacks, but when a fullback's inverted, there's space available that can be exploited out wide. And if you think about it the way I'm
going to jump in there.
Yeah,
there'll be a lot of Rangers fans going, "What the hell are inverted fullbacks?"
I was about to get onto it. What I was going to say is, so your inverted fullbacks come infield. So as opposed to overlapping as Tavernier and Barisic, they'd come inside to play alongside the holding midfielder. So if to use a Rangers example, it's as if Tavernier and Barisic push infield and Kent and Aribo, for example, form the width on the outside. And what that means is that the two midfielders, then the two number eights, so say Kamara and Jack, can push higher, and the wingers can isolate one-on-one. So there is advantages to it, and Celtic do look quite fluid going forwards. But I think also what happens is because they don't have that cover from midfield. So again, to use a Rangers example, for example, if Rangers were to play Aribo and Hagi away at Benfica as their two number eights, that would leave them slightly exposed if their fullbacks went forward, whether that be inverted or out wide. So you've seen that with a lot of the chances that Celtic have conceded have been in exposing that, especially at home against AZ Alkmaar, and they were quite fortunate to not concede. So it's really intriguing because I don't think Postecoglou is going to come to Ibrox and really be phased. I think his team will try and play it from the back. What I would say is if Rangers press in the way they've pressed this so far this season, Celtic will get the better of it because they look good at playing through a press at points. If Rangers press like we know they can and go step up a level, then they could take advantage of it, win the ball in some really advantageous areas. And what I would say is, you see, if Celtic concede an early goal, they don't really seem like a side who are ever going to change their principles. If Rangers are on it, then I think they could really take advantage of it. If Rangers are a yard off, Celtic are quick in transition, and I think could really hurt them. So it's going to be intriguing. It's going to be nerve-wracking. I think Rangers supporters will have more confidence going into it after watching some of the defending that was on show from Celtic in the Netherlands last night.
Yeah, Joshua. Yeah, sorry, Johnny, carry on.
Yeah, that was the big thing from last night, that Celtic absolutely will not yield from their principles. That's 100% obvious. And if you've read anything about Ange Postecoglou, that is not going to be a surprise to anyone who's followed his career up to this point. He has a philosophy, and he will not budge from that philosophy, and that is playing out from the back, playing through the thirds. And it doesn't matter who they're up against. I was listening to Vince Rugani, who's an Australian journalist who's followed his entire career very closely, the other day in a podcast by Adam Miller, Old Firm Facts on Twitter, who's got a great podcast. And Rugani was saying, it doesn't matter what situation Postecoglou is in, he will never, ever change his beliefs about how football should be played. And listen, one thing I would say is, if that's going to be the case, they're going to have to be very, very, very good, especially at a European level against Rangers. We saw Brendan Rodgers do that, and them getting humped 5-0 at home by PSG. I think it was it 6-1 or 7-0 by Barcelona?
7-0.
Some of these really, really big thumpings that they got in European football under Brendan Rodgers, because Brendan Rodgers didn't yield, just like I think Postecoglou won't. But Rodgers wasn't up against the Rangers team that could press like this one or had the quality and depth that this one does. So that's going to be the real test. And we're going to learn a lot about both Ange Postecoglou, his Celtic team, and Rangers in this one.
Joshua says it's going to be nerve-wracking on Sunday, Johnny. Last season, it wasn't nerve-wracking. It was a walk in the park for pretty much every Old Firm game that Rangers took on Celtic. Why is it now nerve-wracking? I know a number of Rangers fans that are concerned going into this game. I mean, we saw on Thursday night, last night, against Alishkert, it was lackluster, to say the least. They're going to have to come out of this rut for Sunday, or else they're going to leave themselves exposed, aren't they?
Yeah, look, the reason it's nerve-wracking is because Celtic are playing with a free-flowing alacrity that they didn't last season. They look well coached, they look well organised, they look fluid, slick. And Rangers, who look like all those adjectives last season, have looked staid, tired, a little bit off the pace, a little bit slow, not quite themselves. And there's a number of reasons for that. But I think the time has come where the excuses are going to pretty much run out at this point. It's one game, and it'll change. It'll define the narrative, not change the narrative, but define the narrative, I think, for the weeks and months ahead. If Rangers win it, then all of a sudden the negativity, the concerns around the start of the season will completely dissipate. And it'll be back to, right, okay, Rangers have laid a marker down, and they'll be in a really good position and really good shape. But if Celtic win, this sort of Postecoglou snowball that is gaining momentum all the time will reach a sort of crescendo, and it'll be very, very difficult to stop at that point if they go to Ibrox and win. It's as simple as that. It's a really important one, and we've got a great piece by Martin Ramsey on the website today who's gone and crunched the numbers, and the detail in that shows you that this game has become incredibly important. Over 70% of league titles are won by the team that wins this first encounter. So it goes to show you this is really the one that counts more than any others. A lot of people think that it's the December game, the sort of December/January game, the traditional New Year's Day game that really makes a difference. And I've heard that cliche since I was a tiny little kid, you know, and it is a bit of a cliche, you know. So this one's really, really important, and Rangers can really put a marker down and crucially, I think, just puncture that Postecoglou balloon.
Yeah, a lot of you getting in touch. Thanks very much for interacting with the show. Hugh Dunlop says, good afternoon. What's happened to Ryan Kent and James Tavernier? Of course, missing on Thursday night. The news we have on Ryan Kent is it's believed that he was nursing a hamstring injury. That's why he didn't travel to Armenia. Joshua, it would be immensely beneficial if Ryan Kent was available on Sunday, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, massively. And the thing is with Kent, he goes through these little spells. I think because he ended last season so strongly and kind of peaked, I guess, in his Rangers career, hit the highest peak he has with some of his performances towards the end of that title win. That is disappointing the way he started this season, but if anyone loves an old firm, it is Ryan Kent, and he's put in some fantastic performances since he came to the club in those fixtures. I think one of Ryan Kent or Scott Wright is essential in that lineup. I'm kind of deviating between thinking it's better to play a really narrow 4-3-1-2 that can be flexible, going and exposing wide areas, or thinking actually stuff that, just go with Wright and Kent and kill them on the flanks. I'm sure Michael Beale knows far better than me, so I need not worry. But I think Kent. The thing is with Kent, if Rangers do play that 4-3-1-2 we've seen against Celtic, and he plays up against Callum McGregor in the single pivot, a lot of what I've watched of Celtic this season, and you've seen it against Jablonec, even in the 3-0 win, because of the way they defend, there's a lot of space in between the midfield and defence sometimes. And equally in possession, because Cal McGregor is a single pivot. It's all this kind of risk and reward balance that they need to strike, and I think they've fallen on the right side of quite a few times. There's a piece going up tomorrow, and I look at one specific instance in the home win over AZ, and it looks at a pass that Starfelt plays, who obviously hasn't had a great start to his Celtic career. Celtic are lined up vertically nicely up on the left side of the pitch. They can progress the ball really quickly through the thirds if that pass comes off. But because it doesn't, then they're left 3-on-2 at the back. And it's this constant seesaw of risk and reward that I think is there to be taken advantage of by a team if they play to their standards. If Rangers play to their standards, I don't see how they don't really hurt this defence. But equally, if Rangers don't have the aggression that I guess that they haven't really had at points this season for large parts of this season so far, then I think Celtic do look dangerous going forward. But Ryan Kent's inclusion, I think, would give everyone at Ibrox a real boost on Sunday if he does indeed make it.
Alan Kelly gets in touch. Rangers will win. We only have to play aggressively. They can't defend against that. I watched little snippets last night, Johnny, against AZ Alkmaar. The 2 goals that the Dutch side scored were comical, to say the least. That back four is ropey.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, Carl Starfelt has had a nightmare start, and he's been extremely lucky that Kyogo Furuhashi has been so good. Yeah, and I think Leo Labada has been so good as well, that it's taken off the sort of criticism of him, because Celtic are winning. But he doesn't look comfortable bringing the ball out from the back, which is the sort of prerequisite for any defender at Celtic or Rangers. He looks like he struggles with that, really. And defensively, he hasn't looked impressive either. I mean, he was under no pressure whatsoever last night when that ball came into the box. And he takes a wild swipe at it, panicked swipe, and puts it into the net. I mean, it's a crazy bit of kamikaze defending. And Rangers will want to put pressure on him. And, young Stephen Welsh as well, I think is a good young player with a bright future, but very, very get-atable. And on top of that, you've got 2 players in Tony Ralston and Taylor. I don't know if Taylor will be fit or not, but he looked like he did a shoulder last night. But outside of Taylor, they don't have too many options at left back.
You'd think they bring the Croatian boy that they've signed from Legia. I think he's a right back, isn't he?
Yes, he's a right back, but maybe he can play at left back. I don't know if he's got that kind of flexibility, possibly. But given that they play these inverted fullbacks, there's a lot of space to be exploited on the flanks when these guys come inside. And the big question, I think, for Beale, and I'd be interested to hear Josh's take on this, because Joshua was saying he likes the idea of having Kent playing in the number 10 role, which is where he's played in the last 2 Celtic Rangers games to great effect. My concern about playing him in there, well, listen, I can see the benefits of it, is who's going to take advantage of that space on the flanks with the pace, especially if Scott Wright, who appears to be one of the ones who's struggling We don't know, but it appears to be that he's not going to be available. So I would like to know, Joshua, who you would use to exploit that space, or how you would do it with Kent in the middle.
Well, I don't know. Maybe if what they'll do is they'll play a Kent as the 10 and Morelos and Roof up high in the centre backs out of possession to kind of limit Celtic's distribution. But then in possession, maybe what we'd see is, and this hasn't really happened with Roof and Morelos. Normally, Roof comes to the right because Rangers in this setup, if Rangers do play a 4-3-3 with Roof and Morelos, but maybe we see then Morelos in the right channel and Kent in the left channel. Morelos is to great success in his Rangers career. Isolated defenders in the right-hand channel. Think how many times he's done it. He's earned about 2 or 3 red cards in Old Firm games alone by doing that. One of which came just last season, wasn't it? And then the other, I think, was a few years ago. So what I'd probably like to see is to have the variation to be able to do both. Because as much as there's that space out wide, the reason that Rangers are attackers are centrals is because Beale wants them to be as close to the goal as possible. And I think to have the variation to go in a 1-2 with Kent behind Roof and Morelos, but then equally, if the space in transition, as you say, is out wide, to have Kent pull left, Roof occupying the centre, and Morelos, who is he's not lightning, but I think he's a really good progressive runner off the right. I don't really see an alternative because personally, I would like to see Morelos and Roof play together in this type of game. And equally, I don't think, I think it's a game made for Fashion Sakala if Fashion Sakala has a different start to his Rangers career and isn't injured. This is the reason I think a player like Sakala is brought in, because he can be adaptable in game as Roof and Morelos can be, but he has a pace skill set that they both don't. So obviously he's had, I think, a groin injury over the last few weeks, but that's why I'd like Johnny to have the variation between both. Because as much as I think there is often space in transition, I think there's space behind the Celtic midfield as well. And if Rangers can overload that cleverly, maybe with Joe Rebo pushing forward as well, as we've seen, his goal against Ross County as an example, then I think there's lots of space to exploit there, both centrally and out wide. So we shall see. As I say, if Kent is able to play, I think that changes everything in terms of what Rangers can do with the match approach.
Rangers on tour getting in touch. This Celtic defence hasn't played the likes of Roof and Morelos yet. It's a good point. And Kemar Roof, Johnny, of course, we've not really seen him much this season, a result of suspensions and what have you. Now, Sunday is a game that he's been brought in to play in, isn't it? We've seen at the tail end, the last Old Firm game last season, scoring the 2 goals. He, for me, is a shoe-in to start on Sunday.
Yeah, look, Roof has pretty much everything. The only thing he doesn't have is electric pace, but he's got mobility, he's aggressive, he can finish, very, very good finisher, by the way. Very clever, drops into pockets, is really good in the air. He's got everything. The only thing he doesn't have, and the reason that he's at Rangers and not a big Premier League team who could offer him far, far more money, is that he's injury prone. I mean, if he was quick and wasn't injury prone, we're talking about huge money for this guy. So he's really, really good at this level, and I think he can cause Celtic major problems. We had a great piece by Adam Thornton on the website yesterday, which I advise you to look at if you're interested in Roof, which goes into detail on what he can offer. And I just think he's a guy who has the game intelligence to adjust to whatever's going on in front of him and adapt and cause problems for the opposition. We've already seen that against Celtic in the 4-1 game. We got 2 goals. And listen, if he's on song, he can really, really make a difference. I would not be surprised at all if he's the game changer tomorrow. Sorry.
Yeah. Hugh Duff gets in touch. Any news on the goalkeepers? Of course, Robbie McCrory came in on Thursday night for his debut. Joshua did well, got a clean sheet. It's more than likely that he'll be between the sticks on Sunday. Do you have any qualms or any worry he is in goals?
No, I mean, I'd rather have Alan McGregor, but in the circumstances, I think Robbie McCrory did, as we discussed this morning, dealt with what he had to deal with well, and looked quite a calm head in what could have been a nervy atmosphere given the circumstances of the 2 legs last night in Armenia. So Yeah, it's not as if you're chucking an 18-year-old in there. He's had 3 loan moves. He was in the Premiership last season. I've not looked too much into his statistics, but I seen a couple of people yesterday saying he didn't have the best season at Livingston. But certainly reading about his prospect over the last kind of 10 years at Rangers, or 8 years, however long he's been there, this number 1 role has certainly been a target for the club and for him over a long period of time. And sometimes it maybe takes a little bit of misfortune for that to happen. So I mean, he's a good goalkeeper. I'd rather have him than I thought. Is Andy Firth? Was he on the bench yesterday?
He's just there for the band, I think.
He's just here for the Yeah, I mean, because that was my first instinct. I actually forgot about McCrory and thought, gosh, Andy Firth's going to play. Yeah. But so yeah, I'm sure he. Again, as I say, it's not like you're chucking an 18-year-old in there. I think he's 23, has plenty of first-team experience, and the coaching staff trust him enough to have made him the understudy in Europe. I think that's what I'd probably read into it. It wasn't John McLaughlin that was on the bench in Europe. It was McCrory, so that's certainly a good sign.
Johnny, I think Celtic star man has been Kyogo Furuhashi. He scored again last night. Rangers will need to keep their eye on him, won't they?
Without a shadow of a doubt. He's a very clever, intelligent player who has a real talent for finding space in behind teams, even when there's very little space. You know, Dundee and St Mirren and Celtic scored 6 against them both. And you know as well as I know, and anyone who watches Scottish football and the Old Firm in the context of our game knows how little space there is behind teams when they come to your ground and sit in. And that was the case in both these games. But Furuhashi has that talent off the shoulder just to disappear, nip in behind, and that's going to have to be watched really, really carefully. If you look at the average positions for Celtic, they're very left-sided, and Furuhashi tends to slip into the left side. And in fact, I wonder if he might be played on the left with Odsonne Edouard through the middle for this game. And if that's the case, James Tavernier is going to have to really, really stay sharp, and Connor Goldson, because we've seen before that in between those two, Rangers can be got at. Even though they've got a good partnership, even though they've been solid in the Scottish Premiership, we've seen in European games, the ones that strike me immediately come to mind, Benfica. In between those two, you can get at Rangers. So they're going to have to be very, very careful about Furuhashi slipping in there into that space between the two of them, because he's a master at it and he's a very, very good finisher. There's not been many players that have come to Scottish football and had the kind of impact he's already had. 7 goals in 8 games. Never mind coming in from Japan, which is a completely alien culture, a completely different footballing culture. So he's done really, really terrifically well to adapt, not just to the game, but also, I mean, Scottish society in Scotland is completely different in terms of the food, in terms of the weather, and he's done a terrific job. You know, you have to say that and give credit to him. And he's someone that Rangers will have to watch very, very carefully. Yeah,
you mentioned there Tavernier, Johnny. Of course, he missed the game on Thursday night. Do you think there's a chance he'll make the game, or Patterson?
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, you know, obviously it's probably going to be Nathan Patterson. So I think even more so, because Patterson's, I think, even more inclined to sort of bomb on and that area can be exploited even more readily. So he'll have to be clever about the way he plays on Sunday. He'll have to really show that he's got the maturity for this kind of game. And sometimes, you know, when it looks like it's on, just take a step back, game management, and that's going to be a big one for Connor Goldson, who's going to be beside him, obviously, just to say, look, son, just keep it calm.
Yeah, I think what you might see as well, just on that, Johnny, is Kamara play on the right and Aribo on the left, and they obviously interchange quite a lot. And sometimes Aribo, I think he played in the front three on Thursday, obviously, but I don't think Arfield gave Patterson the greatest cover over an Alex Curtin on a few occasions in the first half. And Kamara's probably the player you trust most, especially with Celtic prioritising their play down the left flank. So I'd imagine maybe that Aribo's still the more advanced of the midfielders, but Kamara would probably start to the right. You know, if Ryan Jack was fit, he'd be perfect for a game like this, you'd imagine. But alas, he is not.
Yeah, thanks to you and getting in touch. Andy Firth, not in the Euro squad. That's the reason why he wasn't involved on Thursday night. William McWaters says, great comment, finding that space is a big worry for us on Sunday. He means also our game is so static at the moment and we'll play it right into his hands. Alan Kelly wants Patterson to play. Guys, prediction time. Joshua, how do you see this one going? They often say form goes out the window, but more often than not, it doesn't, does it?
Yeah, I was going to hang off another cliche.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really speak much truth. I think it will be 3-1 Rangers. I don't see them keeping a clean sheet, but I do think that they will strike the balance better overall, and Celtic will be a bit exposed. So 3-1 for me. What say you, Johnny?
It's a tough one, this. I think it's going to be something ridiculous, like a 3-3 draw. I think there's going to be goals aplenty. I can't see this being a game where there's very little going on. I think it's going to be an absolute blockbuster. There's so much we're going to learn from this game, and there's so much excitement going into it. I can't see it letting us down. Both teams are good going forward. And actually, with the way Rangers have been affected by all these issues going on behind the scenes, in a way, it's kind of meaning that they have to play a more attacking side, because that midfield three is going to contain someone, be it Arfield or Aribo, who their natural propensity is to go forward. So I think we all know that Steven Gerrard probably, if he had his pick of his absolute dream midfield three from his squad, it would almost certainly be Kamara, Davis and Jack. And that's more defensive than any of the setups that he's going to have going into this game. So, yeah, I think it's going to be probably a 3-3 draw, 2-2, 3-3. I know I'm wildly out on a limb there. I mean, who picks a 3-3 draw? But I've just got a feeling there's going to be plenty of goals. Neither defence is playing well. Both have potent attacks. But hopefully what we'll see is Rangers starting to see some of that fluency again, with the big game element of this coming to the fore and just bringing them back to life a little bit.
Yeah, Hugh says no sitting on the fence. Rangers on tour going for 4-1. Rangers. Alan Kelly going for 2-1. I think I'm going to go with Alan on this. I think Rangers will just edge it. They're not playing. I think, like Joshua says, I think it is going to be nerve-wracking at times, especially middle to front for Celtic. They are causing problems. At the back, they're gettable, and I think there's going to be goals in it. It's certainly going to be an interesting one, that's for sure. We'll leave it there, chaps. Thanks very much for joining us, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone getting in touch with the programme. We've got our predicted lineups hitting the website tomorrow morning, so keep your eyes on that. And we've actually got a flash sale on just now. Subscribe to the Rangers Review for only £1 a month for the first 2 months and support top quality journalism covering the team you love. Plenty of content coming your way on the website, rangersreview.co.uk, and make sure you keep your eye on our social media accounts as well on Twitter and Facebook. But until then, enjoy your weekend and enjoy the game on Sunday.